Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Curtis Rodriguez Porter, and we are here today with Jeff Currey, who is state representative representing East Hartford, Connecticut. And I'm also joined by my fellow Pride ENG member, Sean. Go ahead, Sean, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Sean Mitchell. I'm the Dean of Students at the Arts High School Full Day Program, and I'm the chairperson of Pride ENG. Happy to be here.
Yes, and so, this conversation with you, Jeff, is part of the Pride ENG Pride Month celebrations, part of our initiatives that we're doing, and it's something that the group wanted to come together just to connect with a political figure that's part of our community, doing really great things, such as yourself, out in the community and also on the state level as well. And so, the group came together and thought that you were the person to connect with. So we definitely appreciate you being here. And this is in, conjunction with other networking opportunities that the group is hosting throughout Pride Month, as well as other initiatives happening with folks talking about how they feel lucky to be in a state where we're affirmed, as well as an organization such as CREC, where we're also affirmed, not only as staff, but as well as our students and families. So definitely glad to have you here with us today, Jeff.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So we'll kick everything off, just by you saying a little bit about yourself and your background and what got you into politics and what did that look like coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, let me just thank the both of you and for CREC for putting this together. And, I've worked very closely with a number of folks, including all your leadership at CREC over the last few years, and have been blown away by the level of acceptance and affirmation that they provide, not only for their staff, but most importantly for their students. So I have to just give that quick shout out before we even go any further. So I appreciate more than you all know. So as you mentioned, I am Jeff Currey. I'm a state representative representing the great towns of East Hartford and Manchester. I live in East Hartford, though. I have been representing communities now for about 9 years. I'm in my 5th term. Prior to that, I had the opportunity to serve as the chairman of the Board of Education in East Hartford. And I currently sit as the co-chair of education in the General Assembly. So all things education have always been kind of a huge passion of mine. That stems from growing up and having a fantastic school system that gave me everything I needed to have and the supports in which I needed to have in order to succeed. I kind of got into this whole thing. It was just by way of family. Some people come from families of teachers or doctors. My parents were both politicians and elected officials. There's been a Currey in office since 1982. So yes. So there's been times when my mother, my father, and I all served at the same time in various capacities for the community and for the state. And it's just kind of been our way of life, in which you always give back more than you take, and it's always about the we before the me, and doing what you can to kind of leave this place a little bit better than the way you found it.
Absolutely. Wow, such a legacy for sure. And I know I myself trying to continue a legacy like that with my children now. And so I myself, being chair for the city of Hartford's LGBTQ plus commission, understand the passion of leadership, right? And what that means, and how folks who may connect with you or look up to you or be in a space can see that it is also something, right, that they can attain and be a part of, and that there's a seat at the table for them as well. And so I think that leadership is something that's important. It's something to, continue to use our voice. And I know for me personally that other folks inspire me to want to do more and want to be better, especially in this work. And so I can only imagine with all the folks that you come in and connection with, that kind of burns inside you as well. So, what does it mean personally to you to be a leader here in Connecticut, and specifically for the LGBTQIA community?
Pressure. It's a lot of pressure, but pressure makes diamonds. So we're here for that win at the end. It is honestly, it's a privilege. It's an honor to be able to do what I get to do, and I get to represent oftentimes a voice that isn't always heard and doesn't always have a seat at that table that you talked about. And so especially when I got to the legislature, we just kind of threw our hands up and said, well, if we're not at the table, we're making our own. And that's essentially what we did here in the legislature. And there really wasn't a lot of queer voices amongst our colleagues. And, for a while, it was one or two of us. We're now up to 4 members. So we call ourselves the small but mighty caucus. And you know what? I would put our gay agenda up against any other states any day of the year to say that we hit it out of the park. Every single legislative session, and have ensured that we have, safe people, places, programs for our community throughout the state of Connecticut. And where we don't, we're trying to do better. And that's something that just kind of comes with time and trial and error, and continue to have conversations with folks who are paying attention. But I think it's important that folks do see themselves represented and reflected in their leaders, because as a kid who may, be going through their own kind of stuff in whether that's middle school or high school, and once they get to a point where they're able to kind of figure it out, oftentimes they don't know what to do with that. And so, one of those great avenues to take is to step into roles like this, where you have a voice, where you can be a leader, where you can be a role model for people to come up behind you. We always talk about standing on the shoulders of those that came before us, and that's could not be even truer for our community, especially because our movement is one of the youngest, and so we're still evolving, we're still figuring it out, and so that's going to take generations to get to where we want to get to. So I'm just honored to kind of just be a piece of that much longer process.
That already giving me chills. Like that's so inspiring to hear. We do need a seat at the table, and we do need to be seen. I know when I was growing up, there was no one to look up to, whether it was in media or in politics. Just it was not something that you saw regularly. So the fact that we're changing that script, and we have people like you to help us out with that is super impressive. But then there's all what's happening around the country that might not be in the Northeast here, where we are very fortunate to live. So, being a member of the LGBT community, I get very disheartened to hear about the anti-trans and anti-gay legislation that's happening in particular parts of our country. And I'm just so curious, what are your thoughts when you see this, and being a member of the legislature, what are your feelings?
Yeah, so, you are correct in saying that it's great that we live in a state like Connecticut where we are protected. But I think it's also very important to note we have pockets of what we call the Up-South, and we can't pretend to think that that's not happening in many of our backyards around the state. We're just lucky that that is a vocal minority, and that we have colleagues here in the state that on both sides of the aisle who are willing to step up and step out for our community and protect us from those on the fringe. We have seen anti-trans, anti-LGBT legislation as recently as this legislative session. Some of that came to me within the education committee, and as a chair, we get to decide what moves forward. There was no chance this was getting oxygen, because I refuse to give life to this, that this is not a conversation to be had, because I think what a lot of times these people forget is that we're talking about children. Like what you're talking about and what you're complaining about, you're attacking kids. And if you don't understand that, I don't know how to better explain that to you. And so I refuse to even give that life and oxygen here in the State House. But they continue to drop little things here and there as they possibly can. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw amendments on legislation we're still debating in the House and Senate that they will try to put forward that will be anti-trans, anti-LGBT. But again, we're just fortunate that we have enough people who are on the right side of all of this to be able to support us and know that we can move forward kind of in a positive manner. Absolutely. But having said that, though, we also have to recognize that we're glad we are where we are, but we should be fighting for everybody else, because there's no reason that they shouldn't be where we are. And if they're not going to be, then we have to be able to provide ways in which they can be safe here. And so, like last year and this year, we passed the country's strongest legislation around being a safe state for gender affirming care and reproductive rights. I mean, so we need people to know, like, come here, you're okay. If you're going to get what you need to get, because again, this is healthcare, this is life saving. You're putting policies in place that are essentially killing children. And again, it goes back to that. If I can't have you understand that, I don't know what else to say to you. But at least we can provide that all of here in the state of Connecticut.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you started to mention some of the things that Connecticut is being at the forefront. Is there anything, any other leading charges or legislation that Connecticut has in the works, or, definitely you want to bring more notice to that we're leading here in the state?
Yeah, so over the last, I think it was about 2 years ago, we passed the country's strongest language around parentage, which is essentially ensuring the security of that parent-child relationship, regardless of where you go in the country. And so this was simply a signed document that now allows parents to be in Texas, and God forbid something happens to their child, both of those parents have an equal say in what's happening to that child, regardless of biological differences or similarities. So that was a huge move for the state of Connecticut. This year, we're currently debating providing additional access for insurance coverage for fertility, and so that especially our LGBTQ couples are able to start families. Unfortunately, we're getting a decent amount of pushback on that right now, but I think that folks are going to come around and understand what it is we're trying to do. I don't know how people don't want folks to have families. I mean, all of the
beautiful thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so many times you hear people talk about Connecticut. Oh, everybody's leaving and school enrollment's declining. Well, guess what? I'm going to help you start families. So let's get this legislation passed. But, in addition to the conversion therapy bans, the bans on gay trans panic defenses, the increased access for minors for PrEP. So we're keeping all of our generations safe. As well as, we have the strongest legislation around the humane treatments and placement of inmates who are trans. So we're trying to cover the spectrum of everybody within the community, but we always know there's more to be done, and we're going to keep pushing along until we're done. But I don't think we're ever going to be done.
Right. And absolutely. And, that's something that comes up in regards to, folks always ask, hey, are you and your husband, Curtis, going to ever leave, Connecticut, move somewhere else? And I always say, well, for me, right, I'm a gay Black man, married to a male. We have, our 2 children. I can't just pick up and just be like, oh, I'm going to go anywhere in the U.S. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And so sometimes I have to shed that light to friends of mine, right? Or folks that we have conversations with, because, what we have here is not everywhere. And so we as a family have to be very mindful and intentional. If that was ever to be the situation, we would definitely have to be mindful of that because of the things that you just mentioned. And so having that protection to move from a state to say, yes, these are my children, right? Me and my partner's children, and we both have both protections and rights is a big, big deal, a really big deal. I have friends who they were scared prior to them being married or both parents being adopted officially. If one gave birth to the child and then the other mother has to adopt first, and before that process has happened, was, that's something that resonated with them, why they didn't want to travel because of things like that. So I think those things are large concerns that folks who necessarily aren't in our community should be aware of, that those are some things that impact us, our community.
Yeah, I mean, and adoption alone is expensive, it's intrusive. And, who are you to have to ask somebody to affirm that is your child? So, if we can simplify it, a simple document, you put your name on it, you're good to go. And that's all it should take.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Only everything were that simple. That would be awesome. But thank you for leading that charge. That is huge. I want to flip a little bit here, because being a dean in an art school, I have a lot of students every day who are looking into careers in the arts and stepping foot and testing their artistic abilities. And I know that you have some really deep connections with artistic organizations in Connecticut. So could you speak a little bit to the importance of an arts education and why we should continue arts education?
Absolutely. I would not be where I am today if it was not for the arts. Period. End of story.
Love it.
I grew up and was fortunate enough to have the most amazing music teacher in elementary school, who went on to teach me piano, saxophone, flute, who got me interested in musical theater. I started dancing with a studio in elementary school and stayed for 10 years. And it led kind of up to the culmination of deciding to go off to college and major in musical theater. And, you know, after graduating and coming back, transitioning into politics is basically just a different kind of theater. But I will say the training that you receive within the arts and just the level of discipline and all of that is something that will translate into any career that you decide to take on. But if you don't have those arts, the arts give you a feeling. The arts bring emotion and kind of the human side of who we are, just to allow ourselves an avenue to express ourselves in different ways. And we often in the community find our own folks within the arts. And it's usually kind of where we all kind of gravitate to for one reason or another. But to know that you have just kind of those connections with the arts, it will help you just develop better as a human being. And so, you know, we require within our school systems that be offered and that be taken, because we recognize the importance of having the arts available. And, you know, I actually went recently over to GA to go see their production of
The Prom.
The Prom, yes, thank you, yes. So I actually went twice because my kidney donor's niece was one of the leads for the understudies, so we went to that second performance to be able to go see her. And you know, you sit back and you watch high school kids, and you can just see love and enjoyment, and you don't get that in many other things. So, you know, again, the arts could not be more important in this world, and it's something that hopefully we continue to recognize and support.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And we went as an ENG, we went to go see The Prom too, and it was so amazing. The kids, it was like watching a Broadway production.
Yes.
But you really hit on some points that I think that is missed, like the social emotional piece that the arts, especially, you know, musical theater, to emphasize, to be these characters, to sing the songs that they sing. Like you're learning these social emotional skills that you might not get anywhere else. And so I'm right there with you. If it wasn't for the arts, I don't think I would be where I am either. So thank you for being a large supporter of that. And to kind of go along those lines, so I have so many students here. I've got 450 kids. I would love to know, and many of them identify either as trans or part of the LGBTQIA plus community. So what kind of messages would you like to tell the youth of our community?
Be you. Do you. Like, don't let anybody get in your way. Like, you don't need permission to do what you want to do and be who you want to be. Just be.
I love that. I even told that to my husband this week. I was like, you don't need anyone else's permission to live your life.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really valuable thing to hear.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's funny because I think when we were younger, it was a lot of and I don't know how old we all are, but I'm in my early 40s. So when we were younger, it was, you know, things will get better. And it was always like framed in this such negative manner. And it was always about like terrible coming out stories. And, you know, things like that still happen, but that can't be the narrative. The narrative has to be just simply celebrate who you are. Things are better. You have people now who are out here supporting you publicly and maybe privately, but it's just been great to see kind of the evolution of these conversations that we've had over the last couple of decades. Because, you know, you were talking earlier about, you know, there was no one when we were younger that we looked at. The only person I knew of is Greg Louganis. And I remember I wrote in my sophomore year English class, like we had to pick a hero, and that's who I randomly wrote about. And my parents 10 years later were like, so that was the point where we figured it out. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you know who you know, and that was it. That's who you knew at the time.
Right.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know that earlier, I mentioned a little bit about just the multifaceted, right? How us as LGBTQ folks, right? There's no in particular look, right? To the contrary, back in the day, if you looked a certain way, they're like, oh, that person is gay or that person is lesbian, right? As we know the truth, that is not the case, right? We're across the spectrum, cross culture, identities, what have you. So there's a lot of intersection in our community. Does this play a role in the work that you do in politics? And if so, what advice would you give for us or for folks to just be more conscious about?
I think folks need to simply understand that there is intersection with our community in everything that we talk about, every possible issue, whether that is healthcare, whether that is housing, whether that is education. There are disparities in all of those for our communities and a place for us in all of that. So a couple of years ago, we created the country's first statutorily created LGBTQ Health and Human Services Network. And one of the first things that the network did was to do a needs assessment statewide, which had never been done for our community. And this document, which is, I mean, it's an inch or two thick, now goes through every single possible social issue, justice issue, whatever the case may be, and really highlights where the disparities are for our community. So once we recognize that we need to speak up in every conversation, that's when we're going to start to see change and hopefully, the evolution again of our community into all of these spaces to ensure we're protected as equally as everybody else.
Yeah. Everyone, unity.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. As you say in all your emails, Curtis, in unity.
That's right, in unity.
I love it. So on that note of, making sure there are protections for all of us, what are the changes of today that give you hope for the LGBTQ plus community for the future?
I think just being able to see young people owning who they are gives me assurances that when I step away from this, I know people are going to be able to step into this and take what we've created and make it so much better. I know it's like all Whitney Houston, children are our future type stuff, but like that's legit. Like that's legit. And to just know and to see it and to understand that this is going to be okay. Yeah, it's the kids. The kids give me all the hope in the world. And you all probably see this way more than I do because you see them all on a daily basis. But it is. That's what
I'm right there with you. I met with my group this morning. I'm wearing my change maker shirt because we have our student leadership team, and you sit back and you see like this is our future, and we are in good hands. We're gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to take care of us when we're old, right?
Yes, I hope so.
Right, and it better be a good time. Shoot, I want to hear all the Whitney Houstons and the Cher music that I can, and the Tina Turners. I want to hear it all.
Oh, moment of silence for Tina.
I know.
Well, thank you so much again, Jeff, for joining us for our conversation and just for connecting and being a champion for CREC and all the causes, and especially to our community, the LGBTQ plus community. We really do appreciate it. And on behalf of CREC and the LGBTQIA and Allies and Play Network group here at CREC, we really appreciate you. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate you joining us today. Any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
Just have an easy Pride Month, everybody. Enjoy it.
Absolutely. And go see a drag show.
Yes, or two.
That's right. Absolutely. All right, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Jeff.